Hi everyone, this is Nivedan again from the Coffee and Startups podcast, and I am excited for our guest today. We've got Sandeep Medarametla, and we've been chatting before this podcast, and I'm already like quite excited to talk about all the things we have. Just to give a brief, very quick introduction, Sandeep is a serial entrepreneur. He's an IIT Madras dropout. He's sold his cloud kitchen startup earlier, and now he's started off something called Mande Chain, which is a platform for doing what we know call as now human IPOs. We've got startups and companies that do IPOs, and Sandeep has come up with this very unique idea that why not do IPOs for humans and invest in someone's potential. That is something that I find extremely compelling, and we're going to talk about that a little bit. But most importantly, the purpose of the podcast today is quite different from what we do usually. Usually, we bring in founders and we talk about their journeys, their startup, how does it solve the problem it solves, what is the scale so far, and insights from their experience so far. What we have today is a more topic-based thing. Sandeep has a very broad and very deep exposure into the Web3 world, and the Mande Chain startup that he's doing is about building this human IPO platform on blockchain, right? So this is something that has been on my mind for a while. I understand how blockchain works a little bit, and I know that there's a lot of debate around it. People mix crypto with blockchain, and all the drama with crypto is often associated with the underlying technology. And people who are into blockchain would know that it is not as much. So, what we're going to explore today is not just the tech of blockchain, which many people talk about necessarily, but what we're going to talk about the philosophy of blockchain, which is a very different topic than what you'll find usually. It is important to understand because there is a wide scope, a very broad scope of things that are possible with the blockchain coming in to the future of humanity, the consequences it has, and there is a lot of hype to be separated from what's real, right? So we're going to understand from very fundamentals what is the philosophy of blockchain, and we'll try and imagine in this conversation today what the future looks like with it. So, with all of that, with this introduction, I welcome you, Sandeep. Thank you so much for showing up today, and I'm very keen on having this conversation.
Likewise, Nivedan, I'm happy to talk to Coffee and Startups. I've been following your channel and I'm super excited that you're doing important work to tell stories of a lot of interesting things, and you're the right guy to do that. So let's do this. Let's do some cool podcast about blockchain.
Awesome.
And the philosophy behind it.
Amazing. So, I want to start off with I gave a short introduction about you, but I want to kind of get a sense of what your journey has been like. Give us a snapshot of that, and what are you up to right now?
So, so my journey, I am from this little village in Andhra Pradesh. The name is Medarametla, the same as my second name. And both my mom and dad were teachers. My dad quit his job and he sort of got into business. I later, with the help of my family and my own skill sets, I managed to get into IIT Madras. I also managed to get into bits for economics, but my dad sort of told, don't take up economics and bits, go for IIT Madras. So I went to IIT Madras, picked up engineering, and I didn't happen to like my engineering a lot, but I liked the IIT campus a lot and the infrastructure and the people and stuff like that. So I leveraged that a lot. 2-3 years, I explored entrepreneurship. I was super excited about economics, business, and stuff like that at the point of time. This is back in 2009, 2010. So I started a small company out of campus. I eventually dropped out in my third year and continued to work on my startups. So that's how my journey started. Post that, I started 3 companies. 2 of them sort of literally failed really bad. I I wasted a lot of my time and learned a lot of new things. My last one was a cloud kitchen venture. Currently, I'm working on crypto because I always had this passion in economics, particularly, and connected subjects like psychology, philosophy, etc. And I happened to learn tech and be a techie all along. So I thought, it's a good culmination of all these passions that I have to work in crypto. I've been following the industry since all the way from its zenith back in Bitcoin launch, but I didn't really take time to do much. I think now I'm going to dedicate next couple of years to work in crypto, because I really believe there is a lot of impact we can make by doing something cool in crypto.
Amazing, amazing. Why don't you give us a quick, short brief of what Mande Chain is and what drives you to make it?
Yeah. So Mande Chain is a new L2 blockchain on Ethereum ecosystem, built on this new consensus algorithm called proof of credibility. Right. So I'll explain your proof of credibility. So your first generation blockchains are built on this idea called proof of work. People put in their compute and fight with their compute to sort of make the blockchain run. The second generation of blockchains came around this concept called proof of stake, where everybody stakes their wealth, and the amount of wealth they would stake directly represents their voting power in the network. We are coming up with a blockchain layer 2, where we are saying, why do we want to promote somebody with the wealth, or why do we want to encourage somebody with the compute power? Both of them does not really make any human sense. At the end of the day, people are the one, it's people who are using the chain. So how can we actually figure out a way to make credibility of people count? If Sandeep happens to be the kind of person, say for example, who gets a lot of support from a lot of other people on the network, is there a way we can mathematically score that, saying Sandeep is this much credible, and use that credibility score as a way to sort of represent Sandeep's voting power in the network to arrive at a consensus? Right? Blockchain is built on this concept of consensus. So that's called proof of credibility. So at the core of Mande Chain is this consensus algorithm called proof of credibility. By doing that, what we can eventually do is a lot of human related applications, like human IPOs is one wonderful way, right? Not only human IPOs, many finance tools, right? How can you do non-collateralized loans to people? How can I give a loan to somebody without any collateral, purely based on their credibility, or some kind of their social standing and stuff like that? So non-collateralized loans, or many trade factors. How can we give business opportunities, scholarships, educational scholarships to people, or make them part of DAOs and stuff like that, or give them access to grants, etc. Purely based on their credibility, right? Or their potential to get more credibility.
So if I understand correctly, credibility in this would mean, it would have the context that these many people trust me as a person, and
exactly.
The more the trusted people trust me, I become even more trusted. It's like, is it that, if I simply understand that?
That's exactly that. In a sense, how socially we all have credibility in today's world.
Got it.
Is there a way to mathematically represent that on the chain and promote that kind of an activity, so that we have a chain with credibility scores for every single address in the world? That's the idea.
Got it. So essentially, if you were to, let's say, introduce me to a friend of yours, you would say Nivedan is a good friend, and he's done this and that, a great guy, I trust him fully. That is how, let's say, you would introduce me. Now this person and we didn't have a relationship before, but now we have a certain degree of trust. Exactly. Similarly, there are 20 people like you, let's say, who can refer that, Nivedan is a great guy, we trust him, right? Exactly. You're saying that when in real world, this is how it works. Why can't we bring it on the blockchain, on the database, and then assign everyone a singular trust score or credibility score, so that even if a new stranger comes in, they know that I'm a good guy.
Exactly. So that's the crux of the idea. Of course, there's a lot of math behind it. Eventually it won't come to a single score. It's a lot of data which can be
fair enough.
On which a lot of derivatives can be built, right? On Ethereum ecosystem, for example, there is this new concept called soul-bound tokens that they're exploring, right? Essentially, a soul-bound token is a programmable token which represents your identity on a network. So they're working on something similar. What we are trying to do with Mande Chain is to sort of build a layer 2 and an integration layer with all other chains, where all these wallets can get a credibility score, and we can become an SBT on all these chains, right? So that's the idea, in a sense. We're trying to capitalize on the overall trend in the Ethereum ecosystem, upcoming trend, to sort of build this credibility equation in the right way. So that's where Mande Chain comes in, and the applications of that is mostly around human capital, human ICOs, or collateral free loans, or opportunity mapping, or stuff like that.
Amazing. No, I think that makes a lot of sense, and I think there's a lot that we would also want to cover in one of our next conversations. But I want to go deeper into this, because this idea, human IPO, is a novel idea, and I understand the implications of it being successful will mean tremendously to the world, where today, when the way we have venture capital as something which is now commonly understood, it is very, very easy for me to imagine that something like a human investing equivalent, right, would also be as commonplace. Why would I not invest in a human also the way I invest in a company? Simple. It's a company of one in that sense.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
So I love this idea, and let's explore that in our next call further. And I want to bring our discussion back to the topic for the day, right? And just to remind people who are watching this, the idea that we are exploring today is what is the philosophy of blockchain? Why was it needed in the first place? What was wrong with the web 2 world and the physical real world? I mean, what was falling short in our present systems structures that some people felt the need to bring up blockchain? And then what is the consequence of making this blockchain? What are the possibilities which were not otherwise meaningful in the present systems, right? So we're going to imagine that future also. So why it was needed, and how does it, create a certain future? So that's the context for this discussion. So I want to start off with the very first question. Okay, before we get into any of blockchain, and for people who are watching, we're not going to make it too technical a discussion. We'll try and avoid making it sound very technical. But we'll focus most on the underlying principles and reasons and philosophies here. So I want to start with this question, which is, what do you think is the most broken thing, or what is most broken in the current system, and what is the cost of it? What is the impact of it?
See, the current system, trust is centrally controlled in some sense. I mean, the currency we use in our day-to-day lives, or natural resources for that matter, a lot of natural resources which government controls directly or indirectly, a lot of social opportunity building, right? In the sense, how do you sort of, as a person, how do you sort of get opportunities? As a society, we're organized around, hey, what is your background? What is your credibility, or stuff like that? In the sense, your whole social phenomena as an individual, your social standing in a community or in a country, right? As groups, a lot of these are judged by some kind of centralized power. In a sense, for example, when it comes to monetary policy, government, of course, the function of government is to collect taxes and use the tax money to sort of run the government for to avoid crime and for the benefit of all the citizens, right? Not only that, like government has some extreme powers above everybody else. For example, it can print money. It literally sits on our monetary policy. What this means is that, imagine I am holding some cash, I'm holding some INR in my savings, right? Say 1 crore worth of rupees of money. If I don't really, if I just keep this money statically, saying I trust the government, I have wealth, and I sort of have this money with me, government can decide to to clear their own debts or whatever reasons, right? They can sort of keep printing a lot of money, that your 1 crore rupees that your hard-earned money will deflate in value with time, right? This happens completely outside your control, outside your prerogative or decision, nothing, right? In the sense, some centralized power somewhere is deciding for everybody, thinking that, we need to have a monetary policy, we need to print money for whatever reasons, and that impacts all citizens based on the amount of money that they have or wealth they have, right? So, I mean, tax is a direct outcome, I mean, tax, we understand tax, but where does this whole monetary policy, I mean, if you look at a lot of inflating economy, Sri Lanka and stuff like that, there is a consequence of that. Somebody has decided for everybody, but when the consequences come up, when the gas prices go up, everybody suffers the consequence of it. We are exactly seeing what's happening in Sri Lanka right now. So stuff like that, in the sense, we trust the centralized power and give them the power to sort of judge everybody, or give them the control on everybody's life, partly or fully. What if they fail, right? That's the fundamental point and problem number one. Number two is natural resources, right? Like if you take our forest covers, our mines, if you take Africa, wealth of natural resources, right? I mean, rightfully speaking, the idea is everybody in the whole country sort of have a part ownership of, because we are all The country is our mother, or the land is our mother. So ideally, the idea is that all natural resources are equally should be equally accessible and should be equally be there for everybody, right? But then because we couldn't do that, what we do is we give all these natural resources generated to the government and give the rights over to the government and let the government decide what to do with them, whether it is our mines or forests or whatever it is, right? But again, like, you know, I mean, if you look at a lot of climate crisis, I mean, for years together, all the natural resources, we trusted natural resources to the government. So today, if we are talking about climate crisis as a massive problem, because all the ownership of natural resources are endowed upon governments for all these years, it is actually their problem. It is not citizens' problem. I mean, if you talk it that way, right? Because we trusted them and we continue to trust. But then, if actually climate crisis happens, the consequences of that, once again, the citizens suffer, not the government, right? Government is just a virtual body that we elected, right? So the idea is that, in a sense, so what happens because of centralized systems is there are many problems like this where somebody else suffers the consequences of actions which he didn't take. Right? Or decisions he didn't make. Of course, not everybody is mature enough to think about all these things, make mature decisions, even though everybody had ownership. But the idea is by trusting a centralized power structure anywhere, right? We basically transfer ownership to them and trust to them and power to them. And when they fail, we all suffer. And, you know, we don't know what's going to happen next, right?
So on this, no, I understand. So the concern that you've raised here is that today trust and hence power is being quite centralized, and you are kind of at the whims and fancies of these people with whom this centralized power lies. But just to, I mean, in my mind, the first immediate thing that comes to my mind is, isn't that why we have representative democracy? Isn't that the purpose of democracy, so that I can outsource as a regular citizen? I mean, I've got my family and my finances and business to take care of. Wasn't the purpose of democracy fundamentally so that I could outsource these concerns and these decisions to someone who could do that as a full-time job? What is wrong with that centralization when technically the people themselves have decided that I choose you, this politician, to make decisions on my behalf? But then when the person doesn't happen to like kind of do a great job, I mean, we still have the power to put this person out of their job again. So where exactly is the problem in this centralization still?
Yeah. So see, if you look at democracy, right? Democracy as a protocol that enables centralized power for a period of time, right? Essentially, democracy is nothing but a protocol.
Yes.
It's a constitution. And around the protocol, we have a system on how we elect people and stuff like that, right? So what crypto has enabled is to build more fluid, more dynamic, more decentralized, more flexible protocols, right? For example, to implement democracy, we had elections, right? And elections had a cost. There is ballot counting, there are ballot papers, there are elections have to happen across, there is an entire electoral commission and stuff like that. So that cost was there. Imagine, we had a much more complicated democracy, right? If we have to write little more complex protocol for that, right? I mean, we have these many constituencies, these many MLAs, these many MPs and stuff like that. Imagine I want to do little more rigorous or little more many-to-many vote, right? Now it's a very linear vote, in the sense I vote on two people, they vote on somebody else and stuff like that. What if I as a citizen has to vote on everybody up the chain? If I have to change the protocol like that, the cost of the implementation of protocol goes up like crazy. What crypto or blockchain has enabled literally is a lot of flexibility and a lot of efficiency on how you can actually implement a much more flexible and much more implementable protocols at the end of the day. It's a technology, right? The idea is, yes, the centralized power is also democratic for a larger part of the world. But the protocol itself had limitations. It had very less flexibility, right? And the consequences we are seeing in the sense, I mean, the protocol is literally hackable because, in India, it's a known fact that if you have 30-40 crores and you get to manage to get an MLA ticket, you can spend the money and buy votes. That's essentially a limitation in the protocol only because humans will use any system to their own advantage at the end of the day. right? So we cannot blame human beings for hacking into a system. People are intelligent and they will hack into systems, right? That's why there is a guy who is spending 30-40 crores on an election and win the election. It's a limitation of the protocol. We cannot blame it on people, right? It's a limitation on protocol because our protocols themselves are inefficient in that sense, right? Now, because of that limitation, what happened? Like, we have a barrier of entry. Not everybody can go and stand up for becoming an MLA, for example, right? The barrier of entry is they need to have a certain level of social standing, or they need to have some amount of capital to get into elections in the first place, right? So that limits, so that's not democracy anymore in an idealistic sense, because that limits the number of people who can actually get there, right? Stuff like that. So the idea is, the moment your protocols are that limited, and humans by default use these centralized structures to their own advantage at the end of the day, right? Their own personal advantage, because we are all selfish people. I am selfish, you're selfish. I mean, generally people are selfish, right? We try to sort of hack into the protocols. So what crypto gives us is a better way to build protocols, which we'll discuss deeper into. That's the idea in the sense.
Yeah, we'll come to that part, how it solves it. But I think I get the gist of it, where what we are talking about is that not necessarily centralization is evil, but the idea that the protocol itself, it has certain inherent constraints, and the current system, the changing of protocol can be extremely expensive and tedious, slow.
Right.
If we could optimize for a better and better protocol over time, maybe we could get over or overcome the constraints that being human poses in such systems.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. That is now that is a very different take, because I mean, you're not taking people out of the system. What you're saying is that people will be there in the system, of course, but how can you create better structures and boundaries?
Exactly.
Right? Which are conducive to the goals of the larger mass.
Yeah. Which are more flexible, which are more granular, which are more implementable. If somebody sort of hacks into the system retracts. How can we build more elaborate systems like that, right? Which were not possible throughout history.
Got it. So let's come to the second part then. I want to understand, what are some, ideas, theories that people in recent history or wherever have come up as a, at least as a theoretical solution towards it, right? What is that, and why are current technologies, at least like Web 2.0, why is it insufficient? Why does it fall short in implementing those ideas, assuming that they were indeed going to be great?
Right. So let's take this thing in two parts. One is what are the philosophies that sprung out the whole Web3 phenomena, starting from the big, right? Philosophies or economic theories and stuff like that. Second thing is how is Web2 limited, right? So going to the first one, I think crypto definitely started out as a technology. People understood that you can this whole public key private key combination is a way to sort of authenticate somebody without having to reveal their identity, right? That's where it all started. I mean, you can put up a public key, and the private key, whoever is the owner of the private key is the owner of the public key. A public key goes and talks to everybody, but nobody knows who is talking. But the owner of that public key has the private key separately. That's the framework, right? So the moment this thought process came up, like people started imagining, what can future look like if we sort of build some kind of systems around the public key, private key, or cryptographic protocols, right? So one important political philosophy, I would say, for this is this thing called Crypto Anarchic Manifesto back in 1995. The guy who sort of led this whole wave is called Tim C. May. He's part of the cypherpunks. Cypherpunks are the people who envisioned Bitcoin, the B-money protocol, and all of that, which eventually led to Bitcoin later.
But the theory of Bitcoin arrived many years before it actually got into action.
Yeah. People been trying something. I mean, before, I think Bitcoin launched in 2009, if I'm 2009-10.
Yeah, 9.
If I'm not wrong. Yeah, so people have been actually imagining something like that back from 1994, 1995 itself. Wow. There are written files to prove that. Before 1995, 1994 also, maybe they are not exactly thinking about electronic cash system, but they are thinking about crypto and how crypto can sort of use to build systems and stuff like that. But the idea as an imagination of Bitcoin, I think started long before Bitcoin actually happened. And there are many failed attempts where people tried things and they got hacked and they failed. They didn't sort of see the day of the light. Bitcoin finally became the thing. Before that, there are many failed attempts. So anyway, so the political philosophy for this, I think rightfully we should be talking about Crypto Anarchic Manifesto. It basically talks about, the ideas are a little crazy in this whole manifesto. I will give an example. So the fundamental thing starts saying, see, first of all, government assigns wealth to people. In the sense, government gives you money. Government gives you the right to own wealth. In the sense, you can own a piece of land. It creates a system like that. Your identity is everywhere. So when does crime happen, right? If I have to come to Nivedan and steal his money, I have to first know that Nivedan has money by some means. Or if I have to do some kind of civil crime against you and steal your property, I have to first know that Nivedan has that property, right? So what this whole theory says is, it's very idealistic in that sense. What this whole theory says is, hey, government basically put up this ledger and made the data public in some sense, saying that this guy owns this much, and that created a need for crime. And once again, government only came and told, I am the guy who will stop crime. So they are the perpetuator of problem as well as the solution to it, right? I know. So
it's like the theory of the antivirus softwares are the creators of virus itself.
This is how the manifesto speaks, okay, at least. So what these guys start saying is, what if all wealth in the world, everything is basically anonymously held, right? Imagine a world where everything is anonymous, basically, right? And imagine a world where there is complete anonymity, total anonymity. It's called total anonymity, total freedom of trade. So you have complete freedom of trade. You can sell anything you want as long as the buyer is there, right? So that's called total freedom of trade, right? Complete anonymity, complete freedom of trade, and complete freedom of speech, right? You can be anonymous and speak anything. Imagine a system of world like that, right? Yep. If at all such a system exists, then there is no need for government. There is no chance for crime in the first place, right? Because everything is driven by individual choice. Okay, it sounds a little idealistic, but if you have to put a mental model around this, you have to start there philosophically, right? Okay. So I would say that is one significant piece of political thought, I would say, that went into the whole, or that has driven a lot of computer scientists to build this whole thing eventually. So that's one piece. That's a significant piece that we have to talk about. The second theory we have to talk about is this theory called Austrian economics. It's called Austrian economic theory. The proponent of this theory is this guy called Mises. In 1947, he wrote a book called Human Action. And they build an economic theory called praxeology. So the current centralized government and everything implements an economic theory called Keynesian economic theory. It's by Henry David Keynes. Austrian economic theory is an opposition to this theory. So what Austrian economic theory says is, see, at the end of the day, value is subjective, right? If I give potatoes to Nivedan, he might make one beautiful recipe out of it, and he'll see that's objective value in it. If you give potatoes to Sandeep might go plant the potato in the land, and he might get more potatoes out of it, and he'll probably use the potato as some other way. So the way Nivedan is designed, at the end of the day, philosophically, we are all seen as products of nature, right? We are all human beings coming from nature. So the idea is, so in nature, everybody has a role, and the way Nivedan sees value in potatoes is completely different from how Sandeep sees value in potatoes.
And that is necessary. That is necessary that we see it differently. Also.
Yeah, it's natural for us to see it differently. Yeah. So what Austrian economic theory says is, if that is the case, why can so free markets can happen, right? We all come into the market. You go to market for potato, I go to market for potato. There's some potato there. Then demand supply will finally derive a price. And if you have the paying propensity because based on your subjective value, if I have the paying propensity based on my subjective value, I come back and take it, right? So that's the essence of free market capitalism. In a sense, in free market capitalism, there is no regulation, there is no fixed prices, there is no MRPs. None of these are there, right? Essentially, it's basically like potatoes price. Everybody, all participants go to market with their own subjective perception of value, and if they get the
Perfect.
value back, they pay and get back. Even one-on-one trade interactions also, in a sense, if I have to give you potatoes and if you have to give me something else, for example, I give you potatoes, and you give me I give you 100 kilos of potatoes, and because you like potatoes, I want a book and a pen because I like education or whatever, and I value that so much, and you value those potatoes that much. I might exchange 100 kilos of potatoes with you for only one book, right?
Yeah.
So it might look like a very bad deal, speaking of but the idea is that, in the sense, when two individuals trade also, it completely depends on their subjective value of exchange. They make the judgment within themselves about did they get the value or not.
Fair enough.
So that's the idea of value is subjective phenomena, right? So in value and subjective phenomena, no centralized power comes in and tells the petrol price have to be this much, or MRPs have to be there, or stuff like that. It works like a free market, right? There's no regulation. It has like a free market phenomena where exchanges happen very subjectively, right? So I think this is the second theory. Now you combine both. So you have all these anonymous interactions happening, complete freedom of trade, complete freedom of speech, and value is subjective, right? Then what happens? Then if you think about NFTs, for example, right? This answers the question about why NFTs are valuable, for that matter, right? So NFT has some subjective value for somebody, for one person, right? Maybe they have emotional inclination to have that, or to show the world that I own this NFT or whatever, right? They have a subjective value to it, and they are completely anonymous. The mentor of this NFT is completely anonymous. It's on an Ethereum blockchain and stuff like that. So it's a free market, which has to be completely unregulated, and all participants are anonymous, and all the value exchange is completely subjective, right? I cannot logically convince C about why A bought from B, because C won't be able to see it. Only A and B will be able to see it. It's their subjective phenomena, right? So stuff like that, in a sense. So I think that is the second order thought, economic thought. I would say principally, I mean, I'm putting in a lot of views here, so take it only as my views. So principally, I think these became the layers, on how we can see this whole trade or business phenomena on the crypto world, which eventually is now becoming Web 3. Now coming to Web 2, see, at the end of the day, the thing in Web 2 is again the same problem, right? In the sense, for example, imagine you and me are the entrepreneurs who started a couple of years ago to build Uber, right? So Uber as a business model, first of all, both of us are in a race to become more powerful, right? Because we have to become powerful and trustworthy, and we are putting that effort to do it, right? In the sense, whoever gathers to become powerful and trustworthy, they end up becoming building this institution which is more powerful and trustworthy, which will make it even more powerful and trustworthy, right? So there is always this phenomena, right? So in Web 2 world, the way you start companies, right, it starts with the attraction of some kind of power or some kind of trust to start with, accumulation of that, right? And that attracts even more, right? So, and then it becomes a centralized institution. So from the way things get built to the way things execute, right? In the sense, so who is Uber to say in London, per mile driver gets £2, right? Who is Uber to say? At the end of the day, the driver does not have any say in it. Right? In the sense, the driver does not. I mean, he can choose to either work or not work. That's all. But he cannot have any say in the decision making process of, hey, in London, for me to drive a cab, the price should be this much. So where is the subjective opinion of driver going into the whole equation, right? It's not.
Got it.
Right. So the idea is exactly that. In a sense, when you build Web 2 institutions, it's about pursuing power and trust as much as you can, and the entire phenomena from towards the bottom of all people working as a part of the system, they're subjectively told, right, by centralized powers that, hey, it's not your opinion to put a value on this. It's the guy at the top's, his opinion.
Interesting. But isn't it, tell me something, when free, even if you implement perfectly free markets, the forces of supply and demand somehow, end up with a certain price point which makes sense for buyers and sellers alike. Right?
Yeah.
That is why, even if you have perfect free markets, eventually all profits become zero, by the way, right? Theoretically, because if there is enough competition, people will keep cutting their margins, and eventually the buyers will get the best price, and you will land up at a certain, agreed price as a whole, without the need for regulation also, right? So, and it may be, the more opaque and the more there is more the friction is in information exchange and discovery and transparency, the more there will be some opportunity for trading and, what do you call it, asymmetry of information, right? So you would have that, and naturally over time that gets resolved in a free market, right? Now, when you say that a Uber driver doesn't have access to deciding their own price, I understand they can today choose or not to, but even if one was to visualize a system like that, they would eventually have, as a user, I would naturally go ahead with the one cheapest for my purpose.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. So this person will eventually land up at a price if he wants to get business. So this freedom that we're thinking is so important. Of course, value is subjective, but value is subjective in the larger social context of how much others perceive this value affects how I need to value it also. Value is intersubjective is how I would say. Does that make sense? It is not a value is an individual phenomenon, layer 1, but on the layer 2, it's an intersubjective, a social construct also plays a strong role in it. So that way markets self-regulate. Let's say someone does something unethical, then people start boycotting them, let's say. Right? That is market's way to correct itself, which is like a government punishing it, something like that. The free market proponent would say that, right? So how important is it that free market exists? We still have capitalism. There's a lot of free market, and there is some which is very regulated, right? So what is the underlying philosophy about this? That because people will act in their selfish interest, they will exploit the free market also. They will exploit regulated markets also. How does this solve any of the prior problems that we identified?
Yeah. See, the idea is very simple here, right? Just like I told, Midas told, we are all small parts in nature. We are parts of nature, and we have our own subjective opinions, and we all go to market and interact, and market comes up with something at that moment. So the idea is, the idea of having a market is exactly that. When we talk of market, we're talking, we don't know what's happening in nature, for example, right? If some natural consequences happen, if an asteroid comes and hits us, we all suffer the consequence of it. It's nobody's control, right? So is the market. So is the market. When all these beings of nature go and form something called a market, and market reacts based on the forces, right? If somebody is ready to pay more, the price goes up. It supply demand, all these things, right? There is no centralized hand controlling it. There's nobody coming in and saying, hey, you don't do business, you do business. Hey, the price cannot go below this, it cannot go below that. So the idea of a free market is a market which naturally happens without any kind of intervention from anybody.
Correct. And what about the criminal risks that come, which are preventable with regulation? That's the biggest challenge people throw at it. That fair enough, I want free markets too, but how do you control the negatively incentivized people who want to harm you? There are always such people.
Exactly. So that's the reason the whole crypto political philosophy, like we discussed, started with 3 things: a world with total anonymity, total freedom of trade, and total freedom of speech, where there is zero chance of crime of any kind. Right? So that's why the philosophy came first, right? So there's zero chance of crime, and everybody took bets or bought something out of subjective value they assigned. At the end of the day, individuals are supposed to take ownership of their actions, right? Because that's how the world is in this new world. Like in this new world we are talking about, we are not going to sort of complain, hey, government didn't take care of climate or whatever, right? If a world gets built like this, it's individual decision, individual actions. Every human action has a purpose. They thought something and did that. If that didn't go as they anticipated, it's his problem, right? So that's the idea of individual ownership. So the moment you're right. If a Uber driver, maybe Uber is deciding to pay them £2, and if actually this virtual free market phenomena happens and they get paid only £1 because of whatever reasons, right? The idea is, I mean, you can always argue that Uber is even doing good to people because they're getting, even though drivers didn't put their voice in, Uber is getting them paid more. But functionally speaking, number one, you're not giving individual freedom any kind of, I mean, you're just making choices saying I'm the guardian of this person, right? I'm the guardian of all drivers. First of all, you're not making him think about his own actions and consequences and his decisions. You're just moving him like a pawn in the whole game. Second thing is, so when a government or system builds like this, we have more conscious and aware individuals who are aware about consequences of their actions, how are they going to affect themselves, and so that makes them even more good players to participate.
Yeah, makes sense. I mean, you're saying eventually, but this is also with the idea that, I mean, in the way biological evolution works, this system would naturally, in some ways exterminate people who are unconscious or who are under informed or undereducated. It will slowly weed out these people. In some ways, they'll be pushed out of the system, and that will be the cost of building a more sustainable, conscious system over the long term. But the short term and mid term cost, which is what everyone fears, is that it will be a lot of human suffering, which is where
that is the price we are paying, right? In the sense, why you think, I mean, on a longer time horizon, all the rug pulls that are happening, all the NFT pumps and dumps, all the Luna scam, that's what it means, right? Right? It's the repercussions of a new earthquake that's coming about, right? I mean, some people have to suffer because of that, unfortunately. But yeah, that's the price we pay as citizens to, or individuals to, to sort of claim our individuality in the long term.
Well, yeah, I think that's, I mean, yeah, one has to be comfortable with the idea of that cost too, essentially. There are certain benefits to regulation, but the benefits are, according to you, in this viewpoint and these layers of theory, right, is that regulations will protect you today, but what about tomorrow? And then the opposing force of like free market, it says it won't protect you today, but it will protect you tomorrow, right? It will naturally settle somewhere. So interesting, because today is going to pass, but tomorrow, every time there is a tomorrow. That will come, and then you'll suffer for the rest of it. It's a very interesting take on it, and it sounds, I mean, there is some sort of moral judgment here about, how can you choose that creates suffering, creates extra suffering in the short term. That's why it seems like it's a hard decision to make.
I would say path of least resistance. How can we take a path of least resistance? I think that depends, in my view, that depends a lot on the kind of leadership crypto and Web3 world attracts. I mean,
that makes a lot of difference. I mean, the leadership is going to decide. I mean, today's leaders are going to decide the future for tomorrow, and great people, ethically driven, I mean, conscientious people, if they come in, I think that makes a lot of difference for sure. So that is a very interesting point, that people are who's going to make the systems, right? And we've got examples like Vitalik Buterin and many others who have acted in selfless ways also quite a lot. So let's understand this. Okay, fine. So I think we understand that this theory of maximizing individual freedom, maximizing completely freedom of trade, freedom of speech, right? You said all of these things in an anonymous way, right? If we want to maximize that, what was the problem with Web 2.0 that all of this wasn't a possibility until now?
So see, if you look at any Web 2, I mean, structurally, if you have to break it down, right? Any Web 2.0 company, or any company for that matter, typically had four groups of people, four parties, right? I think roughly those groups are customers, people who pay and buy services from the company, investors, people who invested, or I would not say investors, shareholders, people who own the equity, represent ownership in that company, employees, people who actually build the intellectual property or the land, labor, all the phenomena to serve the customers, right? Employees. And then there is a layer of executives, people who actually call the decisions about how something has to be, or what is right and what is wrong. So in the whole Web 2 phenomena in the Web 2 way of building companies, there are generally these four parties, right, who are interacting based on incentives or some kind of understanding to function together to build that phenomena out, right?
Got it.
What Web 3 does is it removes these barriers. It says, see, there is no separate investor, separate customer, separate employee, separate executive here in this thing. There's only one party here. That party is called token holders. Okay.
Interesting.
With these tokens, you can buy services. With these tokens, you can represent ownership in the whole institution. With these tokens, you can vote and make decisions that are positive or negative for the institution. With these tokens, you can buy the services. So that's the fundamental contribution of Web3 in the sense, the whole reduction of why should we have 4 different parties? I mean, if you go back to subjective value phenomena, right? I will contribute a little bit as somebody who invests into tokens. Also, as somebody with my maturity, I'll contribute by making decisions with my tokens, right? Why do you want to reduce people into certain identities and sort of keep them? I mean, fundamentally, the difference between a Web2 company and Web3 company is this, right? There are no independent parties who has different incentive structures that they interact with each other, right? It's a limitless system. Like, you have only one token boss. All the token.
So let's look at, okay, fair enough. I think this sounds good in theory, that if you can kind of not have split identity with split incentives and people acting in their own ways, right? It sounds like a great ideal deal. What I want to understand is has something of this sort with no distinction, the idea of token holding or any physical equivalent or historical equivalent or contemporary equivalent do we have where an organization, an institution was run exactly in this way and it outperformed the Web 2.0 versions of this split of four kinds?
Yeah. So
do we have basically proof of concept essentially?
Yeah. So there are some proof of concepts. For example, I mean, without having a need for a lot of intellect, a lot of fisheries, right? A lot of fisheries that are locally run by, a lot of villages have a lot of these lakes, right? In a sense, even in India, there is a lot of research. There is actually an economist called Elinor Ostrom who was awarded a Nobel Prize for our arguments against tragedy of commons. Tragedy of commons is this proposed theory. I'll give an example. Tragedy of commons is this proposed theory saying if something is owned like this by many people, the whole community will suffer because of that, right? If everybody is let to graze a piece of land with their buffaloes, either land will go barren because the buffaloes graze too much, stuff like that. As nobody takes ownership of the grass, right? That's the idea. So this
and that is why also, let's say a country like India is so unclean on the outside, right? I mean, it's easier to throw trash outside the street, but you would never throw it inside someone else's house or your own house that way.
Yeah. But it's very tough to assign it to the root cause, but we'll come to that. But there are decent examples around how to, like a lot of fishery communities, right? A lot of fishing communities that Elinor Ostrom studied as a part of her research against she wrote something called design principles. If you have these principles in place, a commune will work, right? That's what she proposed. And she got a Nobel Prize for that. So as a part of her study, she studied a lot of fishing communities, right? So fishing communities is the idea that, for example, there is a village with a beach, right? So all the beach belongs to them. So anybody who goes fishing on the beach, the fish belongs to them, right? Now the idea is, how does somebody share that? Like if somebody is very muscular and has a lot of capital to buy a lot of boats, and if he gets all the fish, he cannot take the fish, right? Because the fish is a common ownership of all the people in that village, right? So there are many villages like that, for that matter, where people have come up with some kind of communal protocols where this is how we will distribute the fish, this is how the capital happens, right? You would have seen. So a lot of fisheries made it work. So Elinor Ostrom,
that is one example. I think this is a mini socialistic experiment here in that ways, right? Where you said, I mean, where the commune agrees that everyone deserves an equal split, kind of that.
Not equal split. They have a protocol saying that so there is, even in crypto, there is a protocol. The token holders have to vote like this. Your vote will have this much count, right? Stuff like that. So you can develop complicated mathematical systems programmatically with tokens. That's the beauty of whole blockchain.
Correct. Is the claim also that these privately run institutions, let's say Google or Apple tomorrow, right? The proponents of this theory, are they also claiming that we'll have better private organizations of large scale? I mean, at small scale, I can understand that this may be easier to implement, but when things get more complex and there are more hierarchies and decision making is more ambiguous, right? Is the claim that in such scopes also a Web3 or blockchain or crypto based solution can really work it out?
See, so like Eleanor Ostrom has theoretically proven she came up with some 8 design principles. She even proposed this for climate change. How can countries act together to address climate change? Which is the basic reason why she got the Nobel Prize, right? So what she told
Yeah, so in a certain context, this can be very valuable, but in another context, it may be completely useless. That is still possible. It's not a universal theory that she's saying. Do you mean that?
She's saying tragedies of commons is a solvable problem, theoretically, 100%.
Okay, so specifically tragedy of the common problems, not an institutional design problem in general. Not like suddenly Google's CEO, they'll be replaced by a Web3 equivalent of that. She's not claiming that, right?
She's not claiming that. What you're saying is when a lot of people own a resource together, tragedy of commons says that the resource is generally exploited off.
Got it. Understood.
She says that if you implement certain design principles on a protocol level, that need not happen. It cannot be there. The tragedies of common will not happen, and
Understood.
even more, it will become an efficient system. There is a theory behind that, right? So, what is the institution today at that scale that actually proves it? See, I mean, there are many good examples in history which the legal system has put down, BitTorrents or or Tor browser or Tor network. These are all good examples where people are sharing things and everybody is happy about them, right? But I mean, there is another counterparty which came through the legal systems and then sort of put it down. That's a different story. But there are some experiments which happened at scale. We can claim that they happened and they are successful and they made people happy. They're happy about the outcomes they have seen, right? While another force or counterparty were not really happy about it and they shut it down using the legal system, right? So yeah, the idea is that in the sense, theoretically it has to work, right? One day when we have it, but how will it come into fruition or reality is a question that which crypto is trying to build. That's why typically the way crypto companies are not built, they're not built around a product market fit. Right, in the sense, if you want to build a SaaS company or a Web2 company, the idea is go find a problem, you find a solution for it, you solve the problem, and customer pays you for it. It's a proof. On that proof, you can raise some investor money. Then you scale up the product and service, and then that's how it becomes valuable. Crypto companies are generally not built. I mean, by the time Bitcoin actually got product market fit as some kind of investment or a stable investment, like gold standard, it took 10 years. Right. But today Bitcoin has a product market fit as gold standard for crypto world or an asset class, right? That's a product market fit. But on day one, it's not. It took 10 years to reach the product market fit. Ethereum found the product market fit with NFTs and all those DeFi. They had smart contracts for a long time, but DeFi took so much time to happen. And now the product market fit where there is a human use case is DeFi, right? So
they were more like would you call Ethereum to be more like a infrastructure, underlying infrastructure, and use cases. It's like building the roads, but the cars have to be brought in. I mean, someone has to make use of those roads. Yeah,
exactly. So I think at least for last 10 years and next 10 years, the way I see it, you cannot build crypto companies on product market fit as an ideology, right? You have to take bets on crypto still with philosophy and how things are going to move in future, right?
That is a very interesting take because someone from a Web 2.0 and VC world would laugh it off, right? And it sounds very weirdly counterintuitive as someone. I mean, I am influenced by the lean startup philosophy quite a lot, right? And the product market fit is like the holy grail of any business. So what you're saying is that this today in its present shape is going to be more driven by philosophy and principles more than necessarily serving an immediate use case.
Exactly. Yeah. That's what I think.
We share this common ideology and belief that we want to enter into this new equitable, fair, more protocol-driven system. We agree to do that, and then more and more people agree, and eventually it gets value from this, that way.
Yeah. So that's the count. I mean, of course, a lot of this is biased by my own opinions, but try to absorb the framework, not what I include in it.
Amazing. Okay. No. I think this is a very interesting take. Yeah, it's it's even complex for me to make sense of why, but it's got me thinking that there is not just one way of going about it necessarily. But I mean, as long as sustainability is taken care of, then you can indeed delay the product market fit. If that is built into the system somehow, that you don't have to sustain yourself with constant profits and keep churning them, then I mean, yeah, why not?
Yeah. Yeah, that's why this is called token economy, right? In the sense, we don't have profit loss ledgers or any of that. We are saying, boss, this token, if a lot of people believe and see value subjectively in this token, the token is valuable. That's all.
Got it. Perfect. So I think,
Going back to Austrian economics, value is subjective, right? So tokenization.
Yeah, understood. So I think we've spoken about, why is this current system broken and the underlying philosophy and principles there. I want to understand any present examples of the implementation of blockchain, right? I've heard a few instances, like for example, Bitcoin is a classic one. It's now considered an asset class for investment. That's its primary use case. What are other large-scale implementations of blockchain that have been implemented across the world, whether in a private setup or in a public setup, beyond currencies or investment assets? I'm talking about tangible use cases, services, products. Where has it been adopted so far at decent scale?
The decentralized finance, amazing use case which is actually impacting real human lives
already.
And this has been a phenomena all across for the last 3 years at least, right? In the sense,
what is decentralized finance?
You can get a loan on blockchains. You can get a loan as stable coins or asset or stuff like that. So you can, if you similar to FD, in FD, what you do is you sort of put all your savings and get an interest against it in the real world. In the Bitcoin world, you can sort of buy Bitcoin. Bitcoin is a stable asset class, at least in the crypto world, as the way we see it. Of course, it crashed. But the idea is, you can look at Bitcoin as a long-term investment and put Bitcoin to get interest on it, like NFT, right? Stuff like that. So DeFi is a wonderful example use case which is widely adopted and actually impacting a lot of people's lives.
Are people getting loans to, let's say, pay off their rent? Or what are they getting loans for? The regular use cases? Can I get a bit like DeFi loan for a car?
Yeah, so I mean, for example, a lot of our parents, they will, a lot of upper class parents, what they do is they sort of create this trust fund and get the interest of the trust fund to go to the kids, right? To sort of support their education or whatever. Something like that is very much replicable today in the DeFi world. Like you buy Bitcoin, you put that in a MakerDAO or one of these credible Bitcoin DeFi protocols and get interest on it and use the interest to fund your child's education, for example. Right?
What is the inherent advantage I have in this system over the current credit system?
So you'll have different kinds of risks and returns. You'll have better returns sometimes, depends on the protocol. For example, there's a protocol called Yarn Finance, for example, right? They're a very low risk protocol, which means your assets are safe, but also a low return protocol. Like they only give 8% on the. So there are protocols like that. I mean, Luna, for example, right? They had a protocol called Anchor, which gave 20% return on APY. It's called APY, annual return. But the whole protocol went crashing. That's a different story. So that's the idea, and it's faster. There is no bureaucracy. It's just one click away. You deposit one click, you withdraw one click. It's real time. It's super fast and efficient banking compared to any other bank out there. Doesn't matter the new bank apps and stuff like that. Efficiency wise, crypto is the best. There is no approval. There is no lead time. There is nothing. So
interesting. And what about any government use cases? I've heard cases of, let's say, election or even like I think in Estonia, they're doing delivering a lot of services, government services on blockchain. And I've also heard about land ownership. Do you know about any of these examples and how useful they are?
So see, government can really use blockchain, right, in the sense, and they should use blockchain to compete with the blockchain only, to compete with crypto, to be honest. Right, like the example we discussed about democracy, right? In a sense, democracy is a protocol-driven centralization of power, for example, right? So if elections can happen on blockchain, for example, right, it makes it much more efficient and puts the government on par with what the crypto universes propose, right? So it's a superior technology, and government can use it to still continue to stay centralized and wield their power. While building a better protocol to conduct themselves in many ways. It can happen from elections and stuff like that. Whatever we are seeing with Aadhars and KYCs and stuff, it's just a starting point. I think
who updates the protocol? The government or the people can vote to update the protocol?
Exactly.
People can vote to update the protocol.
Today, if Indian government actually starts a blockchain and says every single budget decision or whatever, citizens get these many tokens and all citizens vote, and we consider that, it's a possibility.
Interesting. Is it? Tell me something. Have you heard of this concept called liquid democracy? Right? Is the ideal way that crypto believer would say the new form of government would be to implement liquid democracy in the world of, or via the tool of blockchain? Would that be the situation there?
Definitely, because today our courts are limited, our constitution is limited. Even though it's a fat book, there is very limited scope for evolving it. Evolving it takes time, but a crypto protocol just changes like that. Everybody.
So I just for people who may not know what liquid democracy is, in a simpler way, I won't go technical on this, but and correct me if I'm wrong. How I understand liquid democracy is that as we all have equal votes, just like another democracy, but we can choose to transfer our vote of different decision-making categories to different people, right? We used to already have ministers, let's say home minister and finance minister, and all of these people. In a way, these guys are making, let's say the finance minister is making finance decisions on my behalf for everyone, right? So in a way, I've transferred my vote to this guy in this system by default. The liquid democracy, what it would promise is that I can transfer my vote to anyone I like, and that person can transfer to whoever they like. So it is a trust-based voting system. So it is still possible to outsource my decision making, but it is outsourced in a more individually free way, right?
Exactly.
So I'm assuming that some version of that would be implemented there, because in this case, I didn't even need to get into the nitty-gritties also, but I also still know exactly. Like for example, if I trust you that you're great at economics, man. So whoever you trust, whichever person you trust or whichever policy you support, right? I know that I wouldn't be able to know that better than you, so I will transfer it to but let's say not to Chidambaram.
Yeah.
Right? And then you can decide whether you want to give it to Chidambaram or Rahul Gandhi.
Yeah. So to talk of that, the best defense government has against the anarchy that crypto wants to create is not to tax the anarchy or anything. It is to build an efficient system on their level with the same technology anarchy is using.
Yeah, I mean, how should they care if the technology is being used for anarchy by other people, as long as it serves their purpose? But exactly. I think the inherent challenge here is that if government chooses to do that, then it would give away power to people in terms of a lot of decision making, and they will lose their centralization to an extent, which is like an institutional threat to them, an existential threat to them rather. So
I know that the purpose of the government, at least in the democratic sense, is to sort of serve the people, by the people, for the people, for the people in a better way. That's all. So philosophically, it's not a threat, but as a phenomena, it's a threat to a lot of people who are in the power right now.
Well, yeah. No, fair enough. So I think, so these use cases, you're saying that government can adopt it and so on. Tell me something that principally is the entire value of blockchain and what this layer that we're talking about, crypto and Web3. I understand it comes from one, immutability, right? Which means whatever is recorded is a permanent database. You can't mess with it. So it is very, very highly secure system, almost unhackable in theoretical. Like theoretically, it may be hackable, but it is practically unhackable, right? This is one reason why it is important. And second is to the ability that you can design this entire system in such a way that on top of this layer of immutability, that you can execute very customized, complex protocols for whatever use case you can imagine. Is that correct? Are these the two primary features of blockchain?
Yes. So immutability leads to trust. So I think the second thing is protocol. So I think we can sum it up as saying, if we can protocolize trust, it becomes a powerful phenomenon. If we can protocolize trust.
Interesting. Protocolized trust. That is something. And you're saying Web 2.0 couldn't do it because it was hackable primarily. I mean, you can make protocols on Web 2.0 as well, but the fact that someone can come and tamper with it is the sanctity of this entire thing.
Exactly. So the trust is not completely protocolized, right? Theoretically, what crypto claims or wants to do is, I want to completely protocolize trust so that no one person or one institution or any one power can meddle with it, right? That's
No,
completely.
wait. Theoretically, if let's say Web 2.0 was also highly secure, then you could create the same protocol there also, no? Technically.
You can see that's what in sense Web 2.0 can sort of do a lot of crypto innovation in blockchain and start telling people, hey, we are as good as blockchain. But at the end of the day, in their financial structure or shareholding pattern or employee rights or executive rights or investor rights, somewhere somebody is putting in their hand and saying, I can modify this. This is in my control, right?
So it seems like that the very center is also the fact that a centralized power is necessarily not good. In whatever context, that is the fundamental belief here, that centralization always leads to problems and decentralization is always better. It seems like an absolute statement to make here.
Yeah, no. I think we are not necessarily making that absolute statement saying centralized has always problems and decentralized is always better. I think we are making a more imaginative stand saying, if we can completely protocolize trust, maybe that world will be better. Let's go try it out because we have never given it a chance.
Okay, are the other people also saying the same thing? Let's go try it out.
I mean, a lot of people are trying it out in the sense. I'm sure if you're investing money into crypto, you're not completely invested, right? You're putting probably 1% of your money. That's definitely trying. Yeah, so let's enable it. Let's enable it and logically take it forward and see how it can sort of create a new world. That's the proposal. That's all.
Wow, perfect. So I think yes, we've covered this part by what's broken, why is it broken in the current system, and what are some possibilities there, right? Let's also talk about one last piece in this entire discussion, which is as a commoner, as a layman, more like a layman, how do I build the ability to distinguish between what use case, what promise of a use case within the blockchain Web3 world, crypto world is a genuine use case, and which one is going to be a rug pull, which one is going to be just a money making scam for someone else? Is there a way that I can generally use a mental model, what do you call it, diligence method, due diligence method? Would you suggest something on that line?
Try to read and understand the white paper, or try to watch some YouTube videos put up by somebody on the white papers of the protocols. I think a good starting point for a lot of people who are investing in crypto to not get rug pulled or not get scammed is by starting to build an understanding of what the white paper says. Generally also it's always recommended to start with the Bitcoin white paper, then read the Ethereum white paper. Do your research, understand the ideology, understand the philosophy. Just build some understanding. Then you will have a support ecosystem around you, like other people who are helping you out, or YouTube channels who you follow, stuff like that. Build some kind of rational or knowledge around it is what I would say.
Got it. And then are there any possibilities of green flag, red flag that you can say, when I'm studying these, I should look out for this?
See, the thing is, risk is about understanding the downside more than maximizing the upside. So just make sure that your risk downside is affordable to you, always, right? Don't take risk which you cannot afford. So everybody should have their own subjective calculation, like Mises told in National Economics. So the subjective calculation here is you should have an understanding of your own downside, and then you try to sort of maximize your upside within the knowledge and parameters you are working with.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So don't take.
But there is no litmus test equivalent that is there. It is the world is more complex and ambiguous than that.
Yeah, I would say if anybody claims anything like that in crypto, just don't invest in that.
Yeah, I think the general litmus test I use is, if it's too good to be true, it is too good to be true. Like it's something like it can't promise me the entire universe.
Yeah, so right. That framework might fail because if you look at all the Bitcoin performance right from the starting, right, it's too good to be true, but Bitcoin actually made it progress in 10 years.
Well, I mean, that's a general thumb rule, of course. I mean, but there are people who keep coming up and that we'll be this and that and grow this much, but then they eventually end up raising funds and then they under deliver, and then the entire market dynamics of all the ups and downs, the turmoil, roller coaster that keeps happening, it keeps you in doubt.
Yeah.
Right, because the market going down is kind of an indication of the loss of trust that other people have.
See, I think doubt is good. Let's not.
Absolutely.
Yeah, doubt is good. Beyond doubt, I think if you can convert the doubt into some kind of healthy skepticism, that's even good. It's good for the industry. It's good for crypto. It's good for the world. So doubt is not necessarily a bad thing. Just because somebody got scammed and they sort of found themselves in a position of doubt, right? We need not. I mean, of course, they got scammed and it's something to empathize with. But the idea is having a lot of skeptics in the market is a very good thing for the market. It reduces noise. It brings in the right kind of protocols or right kind of phenomena forward. It's a very, very important thing. I think that's also the reason why, I don't know, I mean, they're very tough to indicate, but if you look at the whole market phenomenon of crypto, it goes in cycles. It goes up, then it suddenly dumps down and stuff, and creates a lot of massacre. Then it again goes up and stuff like that. I think in some sense what it's doing is, it's sort of trying to reprogram brains of people, saying, how to think about it, how to be skeptical, how to take rational action, what are the bets you can afford to lose. It is showing people by action on how to work with it, right? Mostly how we work with nature, right? In the sense, nature does not have a language. It doesn't come and speak to you in words. It sends you an earthquake, and then we interpret it in the way we want to, right? And that's how we are. So I would say think of crypto like that.
Fair enough, got it. I think we've covered all of our topics for the day, and honestly, this has been a lot of food for thought. What I like really is that there is no unambiguous optimism that even you have, which I find very healthy, right? Because when I find unambiguous optimism in a future, that is almost like foretelling and prediction, which is a little tricky, because this is a complex world and the possibilities are yet to be explored fully. We don't know how people at large are going to react to it, right? We don't know how the tussle between the centralized forces and these decentralized principles is going to turn out, right? So that is why imagining this future is very important, I believe, so that more people, when they explicitly imagine this future, then at least we are in a position to make a valid opinion and judgment on it, at least saying, okay, whether or not this is the future I want to move towards or not, right? For example, I can easily imagine a very fierce debate happening between a classical economist who believes in more centralization and regulation and so on, right? Versus already there is a lot between free market and regulated people already. And then comes a third party which says, there is a possibility that you can truly make something free, and this person can now empower this particular party a lot, right? So I can imagine this debate. In fact, I would love to watch a few debates where some very, very respectable people on both fronts are actually going head on, right? Have you by any chance seen any debate like that? Because I always see either one opinion or the other. I really want them to kind of fight with each other and help me make sense of which side I want to pick.
So
that's the beauty of debates.
The crypto world is full of debates, by the way, because people within the Ethereum ecosystem keep fighting with all of each other, right? Because they're saying, we should be voting on that instead of this because this is the right thing for the future. I think if you sort of get a little more deeper into crypto, like for example, Vitalik tweeted a couple of days ago, there is this domain address, like I can create a domain name saying Sandeep called ETH on Ethereum blockchain, right? It's a simple phenomena, right? So a lot of people on Twitter has this .eth names right now. So Vitalik tweeted saying, I love it how everybody who has .eth extension fight with each other on Twitter. I love to see that, because even though all of them fight with each other, all of them are also saying that we all belong in one community together.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that at least says that people are at least well-intentioned, well-meaning. They sincerely want to do that, and they're not here to, they want to be in the system. At least they share a certain degree of imagination, right? And then there are bits and pieces around that imagination which they disagree on, and only after we have a lot of conflict can resolution happen and can solutions happen.
Yeah. So I mean, if you have to protocolize trust, you have to go through all that. It's painful.
Wow, this is chaos. I mean, wow. I would love to see, I mean, historically, 20, 50 years from now, once someone looks back on the entire history of, Web3, let's say, right, starting from 1990s, right, and then see how it evolved. I mean, really, we were talking about evolution. So how does this kind of evolution of trust and protocolization of trust happen, is going to be like one of the most remarkable subjects that humankind would have created 50 years from now.
Yeah.
Whether it works, doesn't work, in what shape it works, right? How much of that really comes true is another deal. But however it shapes up, it's a beautiful form of evolution to look at. It's at the intersection of so many things: politics and philosophy, and then economics, and then computation, right? Mathematics, what not. And then the fact that so many people chaotically arrive at a certain few consensus points, if not one. It's just in my mind, I can imagine this like a an animated painting coming together. So I love that, and I wish to see more of this imagination being laid out. For example, I would love if more filmmakers pick this topic up and say that world with this blockchain, economics with this blockchain, political system with this blockchain world, what does it look like, and how is civilization different then? Someone make a movie on it. Why is people are making movies on it, like Interstellar, on space travel and time travel?
I really think somebody should make a movie on Vitalik at least. People made movies on Facebook and shit like that, but I think Vitalik's movie will have a very strong impact on.
I mean, no chance that he would be spared. I mean, someone would make a movie out of it. He's too young. He's still in his 20s, right?
I think when he started up, he's 19. I think now he's in 20s. Yeah.
Late 20s, he must be, right? Yeah. So yeah, of course. But overall, I think there are movies constantly about apocalypse, right? And then there are totalitarian, imaginative movies also. So then why not movies on this? I would love to see this, and I'm going to actually, after this call, check out if someone has made at least half an attempt, man. Because this imagination, to me personally, this is very clear to me that until we don't have a shared imagination, there is no scope for consensus.
Yeah.
Because then it's your word against mine, and we absolutely have no common reference, right? So I need many filmmakers to share their takes. When we can make time travel and space travel such complex ideas and present them into a beautiful movie with human love and psychology at the center of it, right? Relationships. We need that equivalent here.
We need more stories.
Yeah,
because everybody can understand math or economics at the end of the day.
Sandeep, you should totally partner with someone to make a story on this. In fact, even for a Mande Chain, right? A story will make a lot more difference than a blockchain-based IPO being the punchline. So let's find you a filmmaker and make you a little 5-minute story at the very least.
But okay. I definitely love what's happening in crypto. I just want to do some meaningful contributions here. Let's see how it goes.
Amazing. Perfect. I think so. Yeah, we can wrap up today's chat here. And honestly, this is quite a stimulating one. I'm in my mind now. There's a lot of thoughts racing, and I loved having this discussion. There are always these open ends that keep out there, and we don't know where the boundaries of truth lie. Yet it is yet to unfold, and just the mystery of it is just regardless of where it ends, the mystery of it is almost like it's very compelling to take very deep interest into. So you've provoked that quite a lot, and anyone who's watching this, some parts of theirs would be resolved, and some part of them would be further confused and boggled. Right. For example, protocolized trust is a new term that I learned today, and I'm going to throw it around and brag it around in my circles now completely. So and claim that I now finally understand Web3. So I'm going to go personally deeper into this, and we're going to have another chat later where we're going to go deep into your Mande Chain principles of that. How it works. Why is it important? What difference will it make? I'm excited for that as well. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, and you've got a solid, ground of making sense of this complex world. So thank you so much.
Yeah, but I can be wrong. Take this whole thing with a pinch of salt.
Yeah. For everyone who's watching it, if you watched it till this far, this entire hour and a half, I guess, uh, I empathize with you if you're disappointed that this guy turned out to be wrong eventually.
Yeah.
but
Uh,
but no,
but
I think it was immensely educational in some ways, because what you've done is to provoke a food for thought. At least
exactly.
what is known, you put it out in a very articulate way.
Yes.
What is unknown is unknown for all of us, and
Yeah.
and what the best one can get from it is to become sincerely curious about exploring this as a topic, right? If one is interested in what future looks like, you can't avoid it. Simple.
Yeah,
So
that's a takeaway. Definitely, you cannot avoid it.
yeah, absolutely. So I absolutely loved doing this discussion. Thank you so much again for coming up. And I hope that we with the coming years we are able to see some of this reality unfold at a much faster pace.
Exactly. Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Sandeep. Great talking to you. I'm just going to stop the recording. So again, guys, thank you so much for watching. This is Nivedan from Coffee and Startups, and I'm going to watch you again. Come back and talk to you in the next episode.